Okay, everyone, we just got off our first Zoom for the week, and I had intended to do like a little bit of sound demo stuff, so I just wanted to still do that. Our discussion was really good, so I didn't want to stop that great discussion going on. And by the way, we're talking about pink and white noise, and I mentioned my pink and white noise generator, so if you're curious, we can listen to that again. This first one is pink noise. And we can patch white noise. And we were talking tonight about how the perception of noise is itself kind of interesting in terms of the randomness and also just in terms of maybe our perception of frequency. And of course, we all hear things differently. In fact, the pink noise I'm hearing now, for some reason, compared to the pink noise we heard on the YouTube demo, on the video, it almost sounds like a little less trebly, a little less treble, and more mid-range versus the white noise, which sounds the opposite and sounds way trebly and kind of higher frequency spectrum, I guess you'd say. The other thing I said is what you can do with noise is use it as a modulator. So if I take one of my what's called a VCO, voltage controlled oscillator, hear a pitch right there. And one of the things we were saying was how, in a sense, like philosophically, all music is, in a sense, like pitched noise or noise that's modified in some way. We can use noise as a modulator. So you're going to hear white noise modulating this right now. That's the white noise modulating it, and then we can compare it to the pink noise. It's a slight difference, if you can pick that up. One of the better ways to use noise is I might first want to get a trigger signal. So modular synthesis works through audio signals and also through what we call control voltage gates and various signals, trigger signals that will cause something to hit at a particular time. So I have a rhythm playing in one of my modules. I'm going to now go into the trigger input, and it's a very simple rhythm, and I can adjust the pitch and the timbre, the density of the sound, and even get those. You're hearing harmonics now. When you play a guitar, you'll often hear the harmonics playing off the instrument, the overtones or the undertones of the instrument. You can even do harmonics with a wind instrument like a saxophone, though it's much harder to achieve. So I can take my noise source now, and it becomes a little more musically useful. It's giving that warbling sound, so that's our white noise going into the harmonic input. I can do that with pink noise too. A little bit different. So actually listening to this right now, it's not musically interesting, but just thinking about this idea of what noise can achieve for us, I think is pretty interesting. And thinking about the building blocks of sound, there's different kind of sound synthesis techniques out there, from additive synthesis where you build things up to subtractive synthesis where you tear things down or subtract things. And it's kind of interesting to think about noise here, both as having a use in creating a sound, modulating a sound, and also as a more philosophical concept. So we'll go ahead and pull out that now. I just wanted to patch that because I was mentioning to Nicole in the discussion today that there's a lot of cool uses of noise, and having noise generators in a modular setup like this is super useful. What I was going to show you tonight is just kind of an approach that maybe I've been taking. Let me move the camera around so you can see this. So right here I'm kind of just interested in showing you just an approach I've been taking, and so I'm using this particular module here. And one of the cool things I think that modular synthesis can get you thinking about is how sound, and certainly music, happens at so many different levels and really is built up over thousands of instances and processes. And what people do in modular synthesis is use the ability of patching, well, first, customizing your own modules. You can decide what module you want for the purpose you're looking for. And then second, patching those modules. You see all these patch points here, and these all use these 35mm cables. And then I can start to begin to affect my sound radically just on doing this patching. So I have a simple, what we call a drone here, coming out of this cloud busting module, which is an experimental module. Kind of like the building block of sound here. And I can switch on. I apologize for not having multiple microphones. This is a real quick setup tonight. I'm just going to start patching this using these alligator clips. What I like about a lot of this synthesis approach is that you can customize in so many different ways. So this is a random sound that's pumping through this. And one of the things we can actually do, I can patch this into my oscilloscope, and you'll see kind of the waveform that's being produced. Kind of between a triangle and a sine wave, at least looking at it visually. So I can start to patch this and affect this very simple drone. This particular module allows for a lot of experimentation, and it's something I'm interested in modular synthesis. We're going to get almost like a randomized effect, and check out the waveform on this. We're just getting a ton of incredible sonic diversity. Again, musically doesn't really sound like maybe anything we're going to use, although based on the discussion tonight, we can ask some questions about what constitutes music versus noise. I can further affect the sound by giving it some reverb through my experimental reverb unit here. Sounds much bigger, and a lot of the music you listen to today, certainly has reverb and effects that really give it the quality. The minute we take out the reverb, right, its presence, the presence of that sound in our headphones or speakers radically changes, and then we give it dimension and really texture and quality by just doing something like this. And right there, I am beginning to have something that, for me at least, is musically useful. This particular module is a multi-use effect unit that allows me to patch in different custom firmware, so I can have a distortion versus this, a reverb, a delay unit, a modulation unit, and so forth. And that right there is really kind of speaking to me in some interesting ways. I can further adapt this sound, and one of the cool things I like to use are alternative controllers. And so this particular module up here is actually communicating with this, which is a gestural ring. So what I can do is take signals out of this unit, controlled by my finger, and run those into my original drone sound, and you'll see the radical difference in the sound just by making my gestures. I'm doing it all with my hand. And you can imagine in a performance context, if you had a number of these gestural translators available, you could literally combine this with dance movements, body movements that will allow you for real complex modulations of your sounds. Again, everything I'm doing with my hand is changing that sound, including even doing that. And I'll move my hand this way. Sometimes it's hard to control, but it is quite the device for doing really interesting things with my sounds. And if I want to, I could continue to patch my unit here and further affect my sounds. And of course change the quality of my reverb and what's happening here. So really, the sky's the limit when you're using electronics to achieve interesting sonic properties that you maybe in the past couldn't achieve, or at least with this level of equipment, which ranges from analog to digital. The other cool thing I can do, we'll take out our modulation, and I'll take out this point as well, is we can actually use, believe it or not, a banana. So this is a particular module that is hooked up, and you see a tree kind of moving. So what this is doing is translating using TENS cables. If you do any biofeedback stuff, you can actually put these on your bodies, but you can actually put this on your body. But it is taking basically the energy from this banana, or a houseplant is great as well, and translating that into a signal. I can then take that signal and further affect my sound with it. So everything you hear now is being played by the banana. It sounds crazy, but this banana is translating its energy into this module. And one of the things I like about doing this is it allows really what John Cage talks about, that sense of freedom, of freeing the composer or the sonic artist from the constraints that you might apply to your sound. I'm not really controlling this in the full sense that I would be controlling a saxophone if I was playing it, right? It's a much different approach, and using something like this as a complex modulation source really allows me to generate sounds that I couldn't normally on my own. And John Cage, the experimental composer, was really interested in these possibilities of exploring generative music created by nature, random principles like the Book of Changes, the I Ching from Zen Buddhist philosophy. So another cool opportunity there to think about. Just going to fade that down now. So I wanted to show you a couple principles tonight. The second one actually is related to this drum, so a little hard to see here, but this is for a competition to create a cajon, which is a drum. Let me turn on my mic here. Actually, it's going with my voice. So it has principles like we're used to with a cajon. But what I did was I modified this. I put in some springs and a guitar string, and also a pickup here that allows me to take the sound of this cajon and run it into my gear. So what you'll hear right now is I pre-recorded this, but I'll play on the cajon here, and you're going to hear it through this module called Morphogene. And this is a module inspired by tape musicians of the past, the French artists, the musique concrète folks, and even folks like the Tape Beatles, a famous band, or Negative Land, who often used tape splices and put those together to create new creations. DJ Shadow, of course, is famous for doing this years later, but the folks that were actually working with tape and splicing tape together influenced this module called the Morphogene, which will take splices of sound and basically break them down into small units. Later in the quarter, you're going to read a really interesting book, a part of a book, talking about the different units of time in music, and it reminds me very much of this module called the Morphogene. So I'll bring this up and you'll hear both the playing of it and the sound getting processed in here through the various operations of the unit. So for me, what's amazing about this unit is the ability to create these kinds of sounds that are mimicked in tape music, but not at anywhere near this level of ability to just do radical alterations of your sound, is what makes this particular unit so fascinating to work with. And the thing about this is, if I wanted to, I could actually take my trigger signal from the past and make this actually play more in time, and then maybe it would have a musical purpose to it. So you're hearing it's getting that trigger. It's getting that trigger source, and you see the light there. So it's just taking that and playing it every time it gets one of those gate signals. And I can further adapt it. So it's kind of pitch noise, as we were talking about, but much more. And if I wanted to, I can bring in some further musical ideas with this. So I could take from my same trigger source more pulses, different variations of the beat. So this is kind of doing downbeats, as you can see with the light. 1, 2, 3, 4. And these are going to be subdivisions. I don't know what they are. I programmed those in there, but you'll get different senses of what these beats are once we start triggering this module here, which is a physical modeling module. So it's playing almost like a chord. So now my pitch noise, as I was talking about in class tonight, not super interesting, but it has a drum sound to it. Sounds like a cymbal, a hi-hat. Can further alter that a little bit with this unit called, well, this is a unit that is using something called clouds, which is a very interesting granular, not unlike Morphogene. It's a reverb, but it's taking sound and it's creating multiplications of it or variations of it at very small little bits or grains. A lot of this gets super technical. So what you can see is something that didn't have a lot of purpose behind it, or maybe more than just a noise quality, is now a quasi-drum of sorts. And so I can take another one of my clock signals, and maybe I want to use that more than once. So we'll put it into this unit, which is going to give me more subdivisions of our clock. So you can begin with one pulse source and find new ways of dividing rhythmically those sources that you've used or are using. And we'll bring this up now. So you're hearing sound coming out of this unit, and I have that patched into an effect up here that I can further modify. And these are hitting on the same beat, so we're going to switch it up a little bit. And so I'm getting kind of an interesting stereo effect here, playing these two sounds panned left and right if you're listening through headphones. And I could further modify what I'm working with. Maybe I'm not so interested in this having such a perfect sound. So what I can do is I can take one of the parameters, like the shape, and I can plug into what's called an envelope generator. So envelopes are a key part of synthesis, and this is when we talk about an ADSR, we're talking about attack, decay, sustain, and release. Really useful. Check out what this will do to my organ type sound. So it's giving it more variation. The pitch is shifting in accordance with how I have my envelope dialed in. And I could further alter my sound here. And literally with the turn of a knob, I go from maybe a pleasing kind of trip house feel to something more industrial in nature. Much more aggressive. And so this right now, for me at least, has a definite groove to it, and I can definitely see using this for a lot of different purposes in the future. I could even bring in this unit back in and maybe have that as part of the sound, although I probably want to think about some way we can do that. To introduce our clock into this unit to get it in time. That's kind of just an example of a patch that I created on the fly, but it's a particular approach to music that I've been using recently, and it really allows me to start from scratch and to just patch things in as I like them. So kind of a way to just think about where I'm approaching music and sound right now. For those of you interested in any kind of synthesis for your projects, you can definitely connect with me and we could talk about possibly this as part of your project, depending on what you're thinking of for your final projects. So we'll be back again here with more of these videos as the ideas are warranted and as we do future Zooms and things in the future. So thanks for listening, and thanks for those of you who attended the Zoom session tonight.